In my book, I define intelligent misbehavior as the willingness to challenge those rules in our culture that compromise individual or organizational potential. Now, when I talk about the necessity of rule breaking, I'm obviously not talking about cheating on your taxes, running red lights, or shoplifting. The rules we most need to break in order to champion and preserve excellence in our lives are not written in our law books. They're the unwritten social rules of our culture that we rarely discuss, even though we've all collectively agreed to obey them. This waiter routine you experience today challenges the first social law of our culture and rule we were born to break. Be normal. The be normal rule simply says, don't be different. We're taught to fit in. Invisibility is what we want from our waiters, and it's how our culture trains us to live. Be normal is a rule that's meant to be broken, however, because any form of excellence requires us to stand out and to defy normal patterns. Whoopi Goldberg says normal is just a cycle on a washing machine. Years ago, you'll relate to this story because it's very close to home. Years ago, I was hired to perform this waiter routine for a group of professionals, about 300 people gathered in a ballroom who also happened to be in the field of mental health. Now, over the course of the meal, by the end of the meal, like probably many of you, most of the guests had formed the clinical diagnosis for my condition. My final blunder as this waiter character involves tripping and falling over a tray of metal plate warmer covers and making a big production of getting myself up off the floor and collecting everything I've scattered about. On this occasion, one of the guests, who had been watching me carefully throughout the evening, like any good healthcare leader should do, leapt out of his seat, came over to where I was sprawled out on the floor, and picked me up right off the ground. He was a big man. I noticed he had a very tight grip on my arm. He swung me around to face him. He made very deliberate eye contact, and he said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay," quietly, because there were 400 people in the ballroom, which was entirely silent, just like this. They were all watching us, and I didn't want to give away the routine. He said, "Well, are you sure? That was a pretty bad fall. Maybe you want to come over and sit down for a minute." Now, he was obviously operating in, rightfully so, a professional capacity, and had already drawn some conclusions about my state. So I tried to counter this by looking at him with a very level expression, and I repeated, "Really, I'm okay." He didn't miss a beat. He said, "Well, you may feel okay, but I think maybe you and I ought to go for a little walk." I could see where this was headed, and since I didn't particularly want to be placed in a headlock, I decided just to drop character completely and level with the guy. I said, "I'm an act. I've been hired by your association management to do a comedy show. I'm about to get on stage and start a juggling routine." You see where this is going. I didn't see where it was going at the time. I really just wanted to tell him the truth. Well, I waited for him to release his grip on my arm. Instead, he looked more deeply into my eyes, tightened his hold on me, and said, "I understand, come with me." The director who hired me realized what was going on. She got up out of her chair. She came over to where we were standing, and she said to this fellow, "Excuse me, I hired this man. He's our entertainer." His hands slowly fell to his sides, and the poor guy just looked at me as though I had just told him he was adopted instead of the natural-born son of his parents. It was a look of complete and utter betrayal, even though the only disloyalty had been the breaking of the rule, be normal. Now, this group's professional focus to some degree revolves around the defining of what is normal behavior. And I'm not picking on the field of mental health here at all. The man's actions are actually standard across our culture. We generally try to eliminate differences in others and bring them into line when they're doing things their own way, as though something is wrong with them, even though excellence requires us to leave normal expectations behind. All of my performances involve interacting with people, pushing the envelope of perceptions and potential. The last 20 years on the job as an entertainer have been the equivalent of a large-scale sociology study. During this time, I've discovered these 7 hidden rules that are killing our potential. They're pervasive in our culture, yet no one is talking about them. Being normal is the first of those rules, and it's a rule that we were born to break. We're meant to misbehave by standing out and being authentic. Breaking rules that unnecessarily limit us must be the core focus of leadership. Innovative leadership in any organization is based on a thorough understanding of these 7 hidden rules and the ability to champion others to break them. That's because the practices that bring benefit to any individual also create growth in organizations. When an organization is infected by the be normal rule, for example, free expression is shut down and communication across the board suffers. Communication, of course, is a vital component of organizational excellence and requires our authenticity. So the first act of intelligent misbehavior is be authentic. It's the first act of intelligent misbehavior that can help you and your organization thrive.